Hello again, Kin Lane, API Evangelist, here for another one of our API Evangelist conversations where I sit down with interesting folks who are doing interesting things with APIs. We got a return persona, a return suspect, someone who's been here before. So let's find out who we have. Hey there, who are you?
Hey there, Kin. Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me back. My name is Quobix, or Dave Shanley. I'm the founder of Princess Beef Heavy Industries.
Yeah, thanks for coming back and been stewing on our conversation around rules for a while now. Got lots of ground we've got to cover, but I want to focus on OpenAPI Doctor, which is well, I'll let you describe it, but it's the one that kind of captures my attention right now. It's the most visual of what we're talking about, and then maybe it can lead us into some other interesting places. Tell us about OpenAPI Doctor. What is it all about?
Great, thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. So the OpenAPI Doctor it's where I wanted to be when I first started on this journey. It's what I imagined existing when I first started, and it's really an accumulation of all the open source tools that already exist out there that are being used within these individual units of value. But the Doctor is bringing all that together, combined with a platform around it and APIs, and then turning it into not only an API platform, so you can everything you see visually, you can also do through an API, obviously, because I'll be crazy not to do that. It goes against the whole point, the purpose of the technology. So it's really bringing it all together and making it available in a unified experience. Something that I care deeply about is unification of experiences, and it's just that. So when you mentioned it's visual, what it's doing is it's actually visualizing all those lower level tools like Vacuum, for example. There isn't a UI for Vacuum. I mean, there's like terminal UIs and there's an HTML report, but it's not actually something you can use. It's not like a tool that you can engage with, and it doesn't kind of go further and beyond what you see today. So really, the Doctor is the UI of all the tools put together. Right now, it's just exposing Vacuum and some new custom features like the Explorer and like the tree navigation visualization tools. Those are unique to the Doctor, but it's really just got a Vacuum in there with the governance, which is what you were talking about with rule sets and being able to use the rule sets. It's actually the first user interface for rules, as far as I know. I mean, there might be something from Stoplight and Spectral, but actual managing rules and having a UI for that, the Doctor is actually the first one that I know of. I could be wrong in this, but probably am wrong. But anyway, it's how I would always imagine to do it, and really, it's just scratching the surface of it. So, as I mentioned, it's right now it's just Vacuum really being exposed with a couple of custom new features. But what's coming up next is things like OpenAPI changes as well as wiretap integration. So that means, but right now, every time you're working on that OpenAPI contract in the Doctor and you're making changes in the background, I'm actually tracking every change being made everywhere. And what I haven't exposed yet is the OpenAPI changes experience, where you can see alongside your contract every single change or everything that it has changed, with every edit you've made. And that will be not just during your workspace session; it will be over time as well. So, for example, if you're pulling in from a GitHub repo, which will be available soon, you can do the same thing there. So it's all of that stuff is all the mechanics are already there. I just haven't wired them together or exposed them. The same with wiretap. If you're working on your OpenAPI contract and you want to turn it into a mock server, right? Your options are you go and use another mocking tool like Microx or WireMock. There's a few great ones out there, but why can't you just click a button and have a mock server spun up? Because wiretap can do that. At the same time, you might say, well, okay, I've got my contract here. Now I want to test if my UI and my backend are compliant with the contract. You can do the same thing. You just spin up a proxy. It'll then track all that stuff for you and show you where your violations are, in the Doctor during that experience. So having it all automated and have it all, integrated and done for you is really the key. Because right now, different companies and different teams, whoever's using these tools, they're all kind of building their own ways around it, how to use it. This will be a turnkey solution for all of that, and it will run locally, or it will run in your own data center, so you don't even need to depend on the service. You can take it and run it yourself.
There's a whole lot in there, and we're gonna try to get at some of them. We're probably gonna go over for everybody's used to the 15 minutes now. We're gonna go over because rather than do 2 episodes on this, I think we need to dig into some of this. So you are the first with editable rules and rule sets out there as they're being applied, and that there are other solutions out there. Swagger Hub, stuff like
Yeah.
have the ability to edit your rules, but those are often premium features to be able to organize them, run them, manage them. And this happened at Postman too. Probably shouldn't be naming so many names. Is and it's the same thing with libopenapi that you did when you described libopenapi last time in our conversation. Your road to vacuum. Um, there are several decisions you made in there that I've seen before, and that was the line where people are like, "This is our secret sauce. This is our secret sauce." And
Yeah.
fortunately, I feel people feel very much about that when it comes to the rules and configuring and being able to work with the rules. And so you bring it together, I think provides a very compelling. Um, and where does that echo come from? Is that my side or your side? Where?
I don't hear an echo myself
Okay.
personally.
Well, then
Yeah.
we're gonna pretend like it doesn't exist and it's in my head. But um, so it is, and it's that unified experience. So who are you targeting with this? Is this is primarily the producer of an API, but it could also be a consumer, right?
Yeah, it's so it's I'm trying to create an interface for every type of user. So you've got your developers, which is that's why all the open source stuff is low level and it's all APIs and SDKs and stuff you can bring into your apps and use programmatically. That's the first and primary uh, customer always is engineers and developers or hackers as I call them. I call myself a hacker. Um, and then you've got that level, and then you've got the next level up, which is the technical, like technical project or operator who understands the technology, knows how it works, but wants to be able to move with it a little bit quicker. So they need something like having vacuum precompiled as a binary or run as a Docker image, or having this tool available as a drop and go. I don't want to get too involved with it. I just want to pick it up and go so I can solve my problem. That's like that's the biggest slice of the pie. It's the folks that need a solution. They don't want to get into the depths of it. They don't want to learn too much about it. They don't really care too much about it. Their business is something completely different, nothing to do with OpenAPI or anything like that. They just want to they want to tick a box. And those can usually either developers, who are moving through a chain fast, or they're, the technical project managers or managers, things like that. So it's fitting that use case. I just want to get in and get out, do the thing, I want it to work reliably. We'll pay a premium price for that, or service, etc. Then there's the other side, which is actually where I feel is the most unloved, which is the less technical, more architect-based persona, which is wants to be able to design APIs, wants to be able to understand the process, but doesn't necessarily have the time or the experience to be able to get into the nitty-gritty of learning about JSON schema or learning about OpenAPI and the many, many, many different things you can do with it in very interesting ways, or anything really, any kind of standard. But they want to be part of the design process. They're high level, they're senior engineers who may not get their fingers too dirty with code anymore, but they fully understand system design. They fully understand schema design and would add a lot of value, but they just don't want to get down into it. Or it's non-technical project managers who can understand a UML diagram, but doesn't necessarily gets lost when they look at 50,000 lines of YAML. So it's catering to those people that want to be able to take a more design-first approach, where they're thinking about the architecture of their APIs in a more traditional fashion, using something like UML or visualizing the specification as UML and be able to manipulate it and edit it and operate it that way. That's where I'm putting a lot of effort in, because I feel like it's the most unloved part of the market. I think one thing that Stoplight has done very well and captured a very large piece of people's hearts in this space is Stoplight Studio. I'm not sure what SmartBear are doing with Stoplight Studio or how they're integrating moving forward. I've seen pieces of it, but I don't see the level of investment going into that product as what there once was. And that's a lot of people love that because it's got the low level stuff and it's also got the high levels. It's got a high level WYSIWYG experience and it's got an ultra low level developer experience, and it's got that middle piece where it's just I want to get the thing done, get my specs in, get my specs out. I think they captured that whole stack very well, but I haven't really seen anyone continuing on with that approach. So it's kind of what I'm focusing on at the moment.
Yeah, I love it. That kind of interface for different users, that persona based. Maybe that's why I accidentally said one of persona when I first introed you. But I would add, so A, hacker, B, owner, C, architect, just to kind of summarize what you said there. So A, hacker, B, owner, C, architect, is D, governance and
Mm,
policy. So anybody from those three pools that would like to go, why is this rule here? Hey, maybe we should evolve this rule. Hey, why don't we have a rule for this? And it's all those people who I think hit hit governance rules in motion and don't just go, this sucks, this is a bottleneck. They go, why is this here? How do we change it?
mhm.
Solve it. Where do we go? And I could see very much that D, all the above kind of interface. I don't like to say center of excellence or any of those things because that drives me bonkers. But someone who thrives at that level.
Mm. Yeah, the idea of having like the governance board or the compliance board or some word to describe some way for oversight and engagement, and a way to track it and measure it. That's what the tooling does, and then you've got the execution. So, yeah, four personas. That's what I'm looking at. I'm not necessarily right now, and I don't know if it would ever be the case. I'm not looking at the generation of output. So things like SDKs and the manufacturing of artifacts downstream,
Yeah.
I'm going to leave that to other players in the industry who are doing an excellent job, like Speakeasy
Yeah.
and Scalar.com. Doing a great job over there. I'm going to focus on the upstream, as I mentioned before. It's design. It's really the design part of API design, or API first, I feel like is the most unloved part of our ecosystem, if you will. And it's mainly because it's really hard to get it right and to cater to enough different faces, right? Not everyone wants the WYSIWYG. Not everyone wants the super technical. How do you blend them together in a way you can have your cake and eat it? That's hard. And that's a tough nut to crack.
Yeah. But you separate several kind of dimensions of this onion here in that what you're doing is, to use analysts and kind of lingo from the space, is you're allowing people to bundle in an unbundled way, so like historically API management, it was all bundled because of a business and a procurement and selling thing. And now Gartner and analysts and everyone saying, oh well, that's being unbundled, and you have this expansion in the universe. Now I'll admit all sides of this is kind of everyone's hustling each other. You kind of say, you kind of have this, I don't know, this Goldilocks sweet spot of open source. Even going through the licenses for some of this, you can see it's like there's a commercial and there's an open source and there's a plug and play, you know, Lego brick kind of way of doing this. So can you speak to, I mean, because you mentioned Treble and you mentioned Scalar, bring in your client, you bring in your SDK generation, other parts of your experience, you should be able to kind of stitch things together in the way that matters to you most. And you're kind of, you're building that in an interesting way. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah. So, everything that exists in the Doctor, anyone can build themselves from the source that I have published. Everything that you see visually is me taking my years of experience and trying to create, an experience out of all of that open source software on the top. So the Doctor is a rendering of, bringing all this together in a platform. So what I've built, anyone can actually go ahead and do the same thing, which is what, I want people to do. That's why I've built it in this way. These are Lego pieces that provide these individual units of power. There's lots of stuff in that open source that is designed for higher level functionality that just isn't exposed in a way that is easily understood. But if you go looking, you'll see all of these shortcuts, these super powerful little bits and pieces I've just made available, but I haven't necessarily heavily documented because, it's part of the magic of bringing it all together means doing a bit of work, and figuring it out for yourself. So my goal is that you can either build any part of what I have available as a service yourself, or you can build fragments of it, just the bits that you care about. And the same with the actual tooling itself. It's going to be here's the whole thing, or here's just a bit, or you can pull it apart, because the way it's been built is a coin that's becoming really popular now at the moment, is a modular monolith. We've kind of, the pendulum swung towards microservices, and Kubernetes everything, and then was like, oh my god, that's a lot of work. So let's go back to being one simple piece of software, but make it really, excuse me, I'm banging my cups here, make it really easy to modularize and upgrade individual pieces, and deploy independently without having to bring everything together at once. So that's what I'm doing effectively, is creating that modular monolith. There's all these pieces, you stick together yourself. I've done that for you in a way that I think is the right way, but there's nothing stopping you doing that. And if you want to use what I've built, which is it's a turnkey solution, or will be a turnkey solution, it's just a preview right now, then that comes at a premium cost, but it's always open source. So if you're doing what I'm doing, you get to use it for free forever. That's one of the give backs. But if you want to do it privately and you're doing it commercially, and you want me to track it for you and do all the analytics for you and all that kind of good stuff, then yeah, there will be some form of commercial element to it. And if you look at the licenses of the libraries, there's actually a mix of them. I use a mix of MIT licensed stuff for like libopenapi, vacuum. That's all MIT. Use it, take it. It's yours. It's free. But it does actually consume a BUSL license it's actually called the Doctor. So the Doctor is available as a license. So all that high level stuff that I built, like the charts and the graphs and the graph, that's all available through that library. But that is a BSUL. So anyone who's using it internally for non-profit, or like an internal tool chain, or they're building their own internal products, can use it for free. Just like oh god, where did it come from? It's like a database. What was it? Not Mongo, something else. Anyway, a really popular open source database created it, the business source license. So I just took it from that. In fact, HashiCorp went through the same thing with all of their tooling recently. I'm a fan of it. It's free for everyone to use for non-commercial purposes. But if you start making money off it, then you're taking food out of our mouth. You're stealing from us. So that's where it changes. But if you're not, please, it's free. I agree with that. Not everything can be completely free. Some stuff can be free for, just, for non-capitalist purposes.
Yeah.
I'd love to discuss with anyone who disagrees with me on that, but that's the way I've structured it.
Well, I think we're gonna have to do some roundtable series on this and talk through it, because I think we're you and I are in alignment, but I know for a fact we're not in alignment with the way other people think. This is really what I'm kind of beating on when it comes to how I want to make money as API evangelist in my career. That's this kind of balanced approach. And being a not so good programmer, I'm not a very good engineer, so I can't build a lot of this stuff. But I'm a damn good reverse engineer of people's really good work. But I want to respect that and understand and have some agency and license legally as well as creatively in there, to add and stitch things together as I want, and then present with my customers, and then let them build on their own. I want to empower my customers to build their platform, not a sequence of cloud platforms or venture backed whatever. But I want all of us to make money doing this. So it really, really aligns with my vision of the world as well.
Love it. Love to hear it. Let's all make money together. It doesn't mean that everything it's not like all commercial, all free. There is the ability to blend. The world is not black and white. Patches are gray everywhere. So yeah, I love that. I love that philosophy, and I believe it's the right way forward. Everyone can prosper together without one side being unbalanced.
Well, and I think that reflects, with the open artifacts, building around open API, building around spectral rules, and just kind of building on top of that, but improving and going much further. I think it kind of reflects the Git approach. There's several layers there, I think, that we can explore. But so that from the Doctor and the UI, the kind of hub, the modular monolith, bringing it together is super valuable. But I want to dedicate a little bit of time to this and go into lib open API, because our last conversation on vacuum, as well as this conversation on Doctor, lib open API is core to those two things, but also has its own kind of modular approach and kind of you tackling the core things. And as I mentioned, a lot of those were kept proprietary, and I've seen them done before, not released in the way you did. So tell give everyone a summary of what lib open API is, and then some of the highlights.
Great, thank you. So libopenapi is obviously it's a library for OpenAPI, but it's not just a library. You know, when you think of a library, it's like you can go to the simplest level, which is it's a library I bring into my software that allow me to pass an OpenAPI file and do something with it. You know, whether that's generate my own. It gives me that structured model to be able to read in, and that's as much as I need, right? And that's what a lot of people need in a library for OpenAPI is a read-only process to read something in and do something interesting with it, and then they're kind of done. So there's already a great library for doing just that out there already. It doesn't support 3.1 OpenAPI 3.1, but it does support OpenAPI 3 and below, and it's called Kin OpenAPI, as I mentioned last time. But the problem with Kin OpenAPI, and it's not that it's a problem, it's just it was never part of the design, is when I wanted to do something like OpenAPI changes, which is where it does a semantic diff on properties, on schemas, and everything, every single piece of the tree and the graph, really, it does like a semantic analysis. So if you were to, completely jumble up all the properties and put them in two text files side by side, but it was the same thing, it would come out with no diff. It doesn't look at, like a traditional diffing tool would do, looking at lines, additions, removals, things like that. It actually looks at the properties and the values. Can't do that. Sorry, I went on a bit deep there. But the reason why I went so deep is because I wanted to do that, and I needed a pre-built tool to do it. And Kin OpenAPI couldn't do it because it loses all of that low-level information about line numbers and column numbers and things like aliases and anchors. That when you really get into the depths, it didn't support any of that stuff because it was a much simpler use case. So I realized the only way for me to do what I wanted to do was literally to build it myself. There was nothing available that would exist for me to be able to get this kind of data out. Now, I'll pause there and go, if I bring you back to the last conversation we had about me working at VMware, I actually built libopenapi already once inside VMware. It was much more specific. It was nowhere near what I've built outside VMware as open source. And it was very limited in terms of its use cases and very specific for the internal business. But it was the same thing. It was actually called libswagger originally, I changed it to libopenapi internally. But that's the thing I wanted to open source. And like you said at the beginning, is that's our magic. I'm like, no, this is what people need. Let's make this available for everyone. And again, that wasn't a possibility. So when I set about building it from scratch, not only did I want to go down to that lowest level, which is essentially building a compiler that knows every single node, every single position, every value, every type, like to the T. You need to build something called an abstract syntax tree to be able to do that. So I would do that, but I would create it as something that I would be thinking of as an open source library from day one. So, it's actually got 99.96% code coverage on that library, which there's a few things in there we can't test just because they're like testing operating system failures. But it was designed to have near perfect code coverage. Every single line is covered, and there's about 30,000 lines of actual code in there and like nearly 100,000 lines of tests. Like the tests way outweigh the production code. But I built it as this, people are going to adopt it, if companies are going to use it, they need to trust it. The only way they can trust it is to see things like that is designed from the ground up to be built as a tool within this vein, like you would normally build inside a company when you're thinking about building a product. I needed to build the product as open source. So it was building a compiler, something that would go super low, right down to the lowest level. In order to build that, I had to build this really complicated model. And I thought, well, this isn't going to work. People are going to look at this model and go, this is awful. I can't use this. It takes 55 calls to get the piece of data I want. This is crap. So then I took a bit of inspiration from Git, actually, and they've got this really nice porcelain and plumbing architecture. You can use Git at the plumbing level, which exposes everything you could possibly need in every dimension for every kind of engineering possibility. And then you've got the porcelain layer, which is that simple, easy to use, really basic, and get, it's a couple of commands and you're up and running with Git. So I did that. So there's actually two models. There's a full set of high-level models, and those high-level models are built by the low-level models. The low-level models kind of go up. There's a diagram on pb33f.io if you're interested in looking at it. It explains that model architecture, and I call it a DOM. So it represents this document object model, the very same word that we use in the browser to represent, how we compose a web page. It's the same thing. It's the same concept, and it's also got some super powerful machinery underneath called a Rolodex, which is what a compiler has a linker and hash maps for memorizing where all things are and objects and all that kind of stuff. This does the same thing. So really, what it is an OpenAPI compiler. And it's read and write model. There's still a bunch of functionality missing from it that I want to build, but it's enough to give you what you basically 99% of what developers need from OpenAPI, and most of those use cases it's got. Some things are missing, but most of the dimensions are now covered. We're not too far off being a V1 release, to be honest. It's actually stabilized pretty well over the last year, and the APIs aren't changing at all, really. So along with the addition of 3.2, OpenAPI 3.2, and eventually 4.0, I think we'll probably cut 1.0 before we hit 4.0. Anyway, I'm just rambling now. But anyway, yeah, the whole point behind this was that magic secret sauce I want to make available for everyone, and then it's done. If anyone who wants to come along and redo it, good luck. Have fun with it. It's a great adventure. I know a lot of people do it, but they get like 3 feet into a 50-foot depth of pool and realize that, wow, this pool is really deep, and they stop. So there's a couple of great, for example, Scalar.com. They've actually created their own OpenAPI JavaScript parser that they're using in their documentation tool. Really, really good. It doesn't have that low-level model which I was talking about, which is what we need for building tools upon. But that high level, it's like it's becoming the new JavaScript, or it should be anyway, because it's great. Becoming the new way to parse OpenAPI using JavaScript. So I'm being really technical here. I apologize if I'm going too far into the weeds.
This is great. I mean, there's so many directions I could go with this, but see if I can, a lot of the business stuff, startup, technical, the decisions you made along the way and the reason you made that decision, and others, who I won't name the names, along the way have made the opposite decision about what people need. And it has created the fragmentation. And so if you're listening to this and you deal with open APIs and you're tired of finding open APIs everywhere, is this the latest version? What is this? Is this up to date? And then overlays gives you anxiety as far as now we're going to add more complication to this. And then you're like, well, wait, we use Postman collections, and all of that fragmentation isn't technical. It's because people did what you've done along the way and didn't give it to the rest of us. And then there's a bunch of players coming along who want to make money off of that fragmentation. There's more money to be made off that fragmentation. So if you're listening to this and you've read Jennifer Riggins' post in the new stack, or any me ranting about why the space is the way it is, why we have this, we can use the word technical debt, whatever, the state of the API space, that's why, is because we had many chances along the way for that tool to exist. People have created in various forms and shapes, and no one shared it, no one put it out there. And so here's like my vision where I want to be in a couple of months is I want a scalar client. I want an open API, 2 UIs that have persona based. This is for a product owner, this is for a designer. And I want to look at just one slice of the vast HTTP API landscape for my enterprise. And I don't have to worry about bundling and unbundling open APIs. I just want to see this piece. I want to run it. I want to execute it. I want to share it with someone and do. So I feel like the wayfinding you've done in libopenapi is going to help us down the road bridge with product, bridge with architects, bridge with those 4 kind of interfaces that you talked about for Doctor. And it's going to make it possible so the rest of us don't have to learn all of that and deal with that.
Yes.
So do I make sense? That makes sense?
It makes perfect sense. Exactly. It's solving these lower level bricks once and or at least for a good long period. There was a great comment that I saw in the OpenAPI Slack today. And somebody has said, I haven't looked at tooling in the industry in a while, and it was terrible back then. I'm looking now, and the landscape is a lot better. It's very exciting. So I think once everyone, it's and he's right. The last couple of years have been actually really exciting for the space because people are realizing that there's actually some real mess that we've got to clean up here, and there's lots of opportunity in all directions. I'm with you in the let's not make money off the fragmentation. Let's build a series of tools and products that all work together. For example, Speakeasy use a lot of Princess Beef's tools and libraries in their products. So every time that the community makes, my stuff better, their stuff gets better. It's things like that. We need to do more of that and enable that and solve this lower level, effectively commoditize this level, which is when a technology has reached that maturity on that plateau, when it's become that background noise, it's concrete, it's corn, it's canola oil, it's something that is just an industrial artifact. That's what we should get to. So we're not worrying about these problems anymore. They're solved. What's the next set of challenges? And then we can, like I call them yacht problems. Somebody told me that once. I thought it was a brilliant way to describe it. It's a problem that you worry about once you're sitting on the dock of your yacht or standing on the dock of your yacht or the bridge. And you're looking about, should we go over there? Or should we go for lunch over there? Or should we just, make some more money in the stock market? It's like it's a lovely problem to have when you're at that point, when this foundational piece is solved. That's where I want to get to, because then we can all work on the next set of problems.
Yeah, well, I think we're gonna have to end it there. That's 30 minutes, and it's a double back-to-back episode there. But we got a lot more ground to cover. But I think you and I need to. I think there's some scale. Mark from Scalar is going to come and talk, get some conversations going with Treble. I want to talk about the technical reuse, but also the business models, and I want to kind of continue exploring the business and the modular. But coming out of the enterprise, I really want to help enterprises build their platform, and it speaks to that as well. So I think open, there's commoditization, there's all the things the market wants. There's lots of money to be made, but there's also some other underpinnings that I think are critical to this. So.
I'd love to talk more about it. Can't wait for the next chat.
Good stuff, Dave. All righty. Well, I appreciate you coming by today.
Thanks, kid. Appreciate it. Until next time.
All right. Cheers. All right. Yeah. Going to be processing that one for a while too. Lots of stories to come out of it. And as you see, there'll be future conversations here. Thanks, everyone. Cheers.